Hello, Jim Howard here in Fort Worth, Texas. Today's date, it's December 11th of 2022. It may be a little bit dark. I went in a while ago to make some chicken noodle soup in the microwave for 4 minutes and came back. I'd moved my umbrella light from over against the wall over here and kind of put it in between where these desks meet here, and I put it in there. Coming back with my soup, I stumbled over something, and it looks like, well, it's too dark for me to tell, but it kind of looks like the plastic or whatever, broke. I'll wait till it gets daylight and then I can see. So anyway, I knew that was a bad. Well, actually, these umbrella lights, when you don't have room, haven't been really the greatest for me. Luckily, this camera does really well, and I haven't adjusted it. It's on auto. I haven't adjusted it, but oh, by the way, here's the bulb. I took it out. I mean, it's okay, but here's the bulb. Isn't that a beaut? Next trend, apparently. And well, it's too dark for me to tell you what the wattage is and everything. What I've been doing for the last few hours is making a list of monitors that I have. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually, I've got about 9 monitors, not counting the monitor my son is using and my ex-wife is using, and I think there's another one, probably one in his room or something too. Looks like all of them except for one, I believe. Well, this is a ViewSonic monitor I have here. Oh, I wonder if this is on the list. Anyway, I've got an LG 34WK 650. It's a 34-inch. It does HDR10, 75 hertz, and it's 2560 by 1080. Let's see, I should have marked which ones I'm using here so I would know. Then the other LG monitor I have is a 27UL550. It's a 27-inch. Now it's a 4K. It does HDR10, and it's 3840 by 2160. Then I have a LG 29WN600. Like I said, 29 inches, does HDR10, 75 hertz. It's 2560 by 1080. I think these enter the two. No, well, this one is an El Cheapo. It's only a 25-inch. It's an LG 25UM57. And the resolution is 2560 by 1080. That's as far, I think, as I have made it on my little project that I've been doing since, I don't know what time, 5 a.m. or 4:30 a.m. or something like that, and it's now 7:33 a.m. It will be, well, I guess, yeah, I don't know what time. Well, my stuff would tell me. I'll just wait till I get some light in here so I can see what I've done with that stand. Now I had several stands like that, and I don't know where the others are. All my computer stuff and that type of stuff is all in this room. There is a closet by the front door, and there's a shelf up there, and I've got there's stuff up there, computer stuff. I could probably make some money selling, like on eBay or something, but I don't like to ship anything anymore. Over the years, pain in the butt. If you mail something to Canada from the United States, they have a tariff. Maybe they don't call it a tariff, I don't know what it is, but people getting packages in up there, at the border, the stuff is checked, stopped, or whatever, and then I guess the Canadians have to pay. If they bought it in the United States, or if somebody sent it to them, I don't, like an eBay sale or something. Let's say that, well, I don't know how it works. Maybe some Canadian will jump in here. Nah, do we really care? But yeah, like I think if you get it like from Amazon or something. Now, is there an Amazon, Canada site or login? I'm not sure how it works. I'm guessing that if you buy something and it's 10% cheaper here, and you're in Canada, you're a Canadian, and you have it go there, that at the border they're going to charge you that 10. So you're going to pay that 10%. So you didn't get a discount from buying it from the United States or something like that. New subject. I think the last one, I don't know if it was the last, maybe the one before, but it was slightly out of sync. And somebody left a comment, saying, "Oh, you messed it up again, Jim," or something to that effect. I didn't do anything, but what I think I did do is put on that little header music thing that leads into it. And maybe that, maybe that did it. And since I'm not sure, I'm not going to use, until I'm sure, positively sure, I'm not going to run that little, intro thing again. I found a video. Oh yeah, I found a video. Just, I don't know, a minute or 2 minutes or whatever. When I returned something, cell phone, I think, and took it out to, I forget the name of the large department store. I don't remember being in one before. But I'm 81, so I probably was in that store at some time, in the past. I spent a year doing security at a shopping mall. So I probably walked by the store, and I don't think it was one of the main. Usually these, well, I don't know. I'm not sure how many shopping malls we have left. Big ones. Wow, world is changing. But anyway, when I was there, I took this item back, and Hillary was doing some shopping, so I was doing some, and so I made a little video, real short video, and I'm not sure if I actually included it in a video. It was just a short video with my cell phone. But I included it at the end of a video, and then I uploaded it just as a video by itself, and it's like very short. But if I didn't even realize it when I was there, to have that cell phone sent back. Reason I had it sent back was I couldn't get it to recognize that there was an SD card put in. And I tried a whole bunch of stuff and nothing worked. So I sent it back. Pretty neat in that you take it there and you don't even have to have it in the box that, they'll wrap it up and I mean, Amazon agrees to it. You can take it there. The one thing though, it did take like the maximum amount of time to get the refund. Of course, it was all in the box, completely in the box. Like when I got it, mint condition, of course, and I sent it back like within a day or two or something. But it had some nice features. I'd never even heard of the company. But it had some really nice features, especially like for a working man. It was rugged, and it had features like a whole bunch I can't even think of that were neat, and waterproof and all kinds of stuff. I've got a Pixel 3, I think it's a 4A, I think. I never can remember. But, and I really don't, don't use the cell phone all that much. But I would like to have the one, and of course a lot of people say, well, they're sorry they got the 6.5 or 6.5 or 6.3 or whatever it is, because it's so, and I have small hands, by the way, like Donald Trump. And I never realized it, that I had small hands. And I spent 30 years, having to qualify every year on the, the range, police department range, and I qualified every year, but I didn't really, I'm not somebody that pays a bunch of attention to myself. I had a doctor that logged that on my medical record when I was checked for something, and he was correct. He put that, it's something about, I've got a shoulder here that is, sort of both of them, but this shoulder here is, or is it this one? I don't know. This thing is actually, it's popping out of, it's new. It's popping out of the joint or something. I mean, coming out, and then it goes back in. And there's things like that, but anyway, I didn't realize that I had, well, I didn't pay any attention to that. When I was working at CompUSA in Miami, I worked there a little bit over a year. I really liked that job. I mean, it was I was just pricing the stuff. And when I hired in, they had another employee that was doing it. And she wasn't, I think she had just started doing it too. And she wasn't doing it, and she wasn't doing the job. I never said anything. I just went in and did, what needed to be done. And so they hired a company to come in to do inventory. And it was, I think it might have been the entire group, a large group of women, Hispanic and black. And there might have been somebody else in there, And so the CompUSA employees, our thing was to, watch this group. There were different groups, And so we were to watch the group and make sure that they scanned all of our products, our inventory. And so the girls were of course, I was right there, and I mean, they knew, they were making comments about, small hands and giggling and that kind of stuff, and then I was, like, yeah, I guess it didn't even, you know, I mean, I knew, small hands, small penis, all that kind of stuff, and they were doing that and joking around and that kind of stuff, and I didn't pay it, and it didn't ring in. And then years later, when I was back in Texas or whatever, I think, I ordered some gloves or something for some reason. I think it was Texas. And so I'm guessing, I probably ordered, I know I didn't order large gloves, so I probably ordered like medium gloves, and it was like, what in the world's going on here, And then that's how I found out that I have small hands, like Donald Trump. But I wonder how, I'm surprised, one, that some of the officers that I worked with, especially like back in like 1972 or something like that, and for like 3 years I worked at a small, well, it wasn't exactly small, a Catholic hospital. And I'm surprised that, and I was carrying a Smith & Wesson 357. Now you weren't allowed, but the Board of Police Commissioners, security, and we were required to do the same as the police, so you could have a 357, but you couldn't fire 357 ammo in it. And then many years later, when the Kansas City, Missouri when the Board of Police Commissioners said that the Kansas City, Missouri police officers could go to autos or whatever, then they allowed the private officers also, us to do so. But anyway, so my first revolver was the outdoorsman's model. And of course I carried .38 ammo, but it was a big weapon, and I really liked that, and I wish I'd never sold it. But well, I guess like everything, later, I had a stainless steel revolver, and then I had a nickel one. Was it nickel? At least I didn't say chrome or something. I forget. But I have a picture of me that I have no pictures. Well, I do. There's a picture of me at a hospital, in the emergency room standing there. Yeah, but I don't have, I wish, the cell phones weren't. And I have no pictures of me working as a welder, working on railroad cars, working on gigantic trucks. I mean, I would love to have a picture of me, standing in front of a Dart truck, the gigantic things and stuff like that. But that was the olden days. Anyway, the outdoorsman model, I think it's a very popular, it's one I think that is, I'm not a gun nut, so, I mean, I had to carry it. It was a tool. When I was a welder, I had to have the leather, I had to have the gloves, I had to have the hood, I had to have a chipping hammer, whatever. I mean, that's required. And when I was a security officer or a reserve police officer or whatever I was, I had to have, have the tools. But finally we got to autos, and that was at first it looked like the Board of Police Commissioners when they decided that police officers and private officers could go to something other than a 4-inch .38, revolver. At first they said, okay, it's going to be Smith & Wesson, such and such, I forget. And then the Board of Police Commissioners changed their mind, and they said, well, Kansas City officers are going to Smith & Wesson. I forget what the model was. It's a very popular one that police departments all across the United States were starting to use. And anyway, then they decided that for private, companies and private security officers, if the company authorizes you to carry something, you can carry it as long as you qualify on the range with it. I went ahead and went with the same one that the Kansas City, Missouri police officers were carrying. And but we had one officer who had a .50 caliber. When you saw that, I mean, it was like, they looked at the barrel. And it's kind of funny. I joked. In the beginning, I joked like when I worked the first hospital security that I worked, and that was almost the first security that I worked. But I worked. Actually, I had for about a year my own patrol service or whatever. But I kind of figured that my starting of my thing was like at St. Joe Hospital in 1972 or whatever. I think it was about the time. But that's when the song was out. I shot the sheriff, but I didn't shoot the deputy or something like that. And I was about as skinny as Barney Fife. This was in the worst part of Kansas City, Missouri. The ghetto. You're not allowed to say the ghetto, I think. But I'd be standing there, and some young black guys would come in, and then they'd see me, and then they'd say, Barney Fife or something, and then I shot the sheriff, but I didn't shoot the deputy or whatever. At that hospital, we had 2 security officers shot in the line of duty. One permanently disabled, and then one was killed, shot. But John managed to shoot the guy that shot him. But when I had my patrol service about a year, I just I could have, since it was my company, I just carried a .38. I could have carried an assault rifle if I wanted to, in the vehicle, I'm sure. I think if I'd have gone walking around on the streets with an assault rifle, even though I was, at a commission. I don't get them very much, but I guess I don't talk about it very much. But occasionally somebody would leave a message to something that I put, about hospital security or something that I did or something like that, and they would say, security guards can't carry guns or such, blah blah blah, like stuff like that. And it usually goes by there's usually state rules, and then local, also then city, you can have their rules based on that or whatever. Anyway, these people, Missouri was kind of unique. Back in the early days of Kansas City, Missouri, Pendergast was a city boss or whatever, and he ran the city. He was corrupt, and he ran the city. And if you wanted to get on the fire department or the police department or whatever, you had to go see him, and he would give you one of his business cards. I think if it was signed in red or something, that meant you got a job. So if he sent you to the police department, and you had his card, you got hired into the police department. If fire department, all those type of stuff. He built the city hall. I think it was. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was the courthouse. I forget. But that kind of stuff. And his concrete was used, and his workers were used, and it was really, it was corrupt. And but finally, the state. It was so bad, that the state stepped in, and I'm not sure exactly how how it worked, except that the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department, I'm guessing the St. Louis, I don't know, was the police department was so corrupt and everything that the state stepped in, and then so Kansas City, Missouri had a board of police commissioners that, and I'm not sure exactly how they were appointed, but it was to get away from the corruption and everything. And so there was the board of police commissioners, and then there was an agency off of that, private officers or whatever, commission, and it actually worked out well for security officers, because we were really integrated into the board of police commissioners thing. They set up a private officers commissioning unit, that type of stuff. And it turns out, and the last I heard, I left Kansas City in 2000, but for the years that I worked there, which was, from, well, before 72, but I always say 72, that's when I started hospital security for 30 years. You had full police power. The security guard, the night watchman, had full police powers on the property that he was, protecting. And I'm not sure when it kicked in. Maybe it was from the too many police officers were going to court. I remember that. That was later in the thing, but I think it always applied. But there were too many police officers who were going to court on things that were taking up their time, trespassing, disturbing the peace, disorderly conduct, things that security officers had called the police, arrested the person, which you could, in my thing when I mentioned arrest or something like that, there's a few people, security guards can't arrest people. Well, you could, depends on the state, depends on the licensing thing. You definitely could in Kansas City, Missouri. And we had full police power, and so the Board of Police Commissioners put out a thing telling police officers, when you go, to wherever you're called, to the hospital or wherever it is, and you take the person who's arrested by the security guard, and you write the time, that the court date, like you were writing like he was writing, but because we didn't have the ability to write a court date or whatever. The officer had to do that. And then the officer wasn't supposed to show up. A lot of times they did, because they were using, their things. But there was some interesting things about that. When I worked in Florida, in some most jurisdictions or whatever, you didn't have, like Kansas City, Missouri, that was very favorable, for a security officer to have full police powers. We could do hot pursuit off of the property if it was something that started. We did a hot pursuit. After I left, after working there until 2000, when I left, shortly after I left, in fact, the hospital that I retired from, they had an incident where I think he was a mental patient, but but I'm not sure he was in. There was when I started to work there, they had the seventh floor, I think it was a mental unit. And then what they did is made a deal with healthcare corporations for profit. They on the property there, they built a psych hospital. But anyway, this is after I left. So I think it was an ER patient, but a psych patient, and he took off, and security went after him, and I think it maybe half a mile, maybe a mile. I'm not sure exactly how far. It was a big park. I mean, a really big park, smoke park, and the patient made it that far, and then security caught up with him and had a little wrestling match with him, but they got him. And then a security supervisor, went over to help, and he went over with the patrol car, which had red lights on it, but no siren, of course. I believe it had red lights on it. I'm sure it did, because it didn't have, it had to have red lights. But anyway, he went over, and when he got over there, the psych patient got loose or something and broke this security supervisor's arm and took the security patrol vehicle and took off in it. Left the streets of Kansas City, Missouri, up onto 435, an interstate that went over to I-70, and I think the guy was with our patrol car. Wasn't mine then, but he was heading to, I think he was heading to St. Louis, Missouri or something with the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. One of those chases, I guess. Like I said, I wasn't there then. I wasn't even in Kansas City, but I heard about it. Anyway, the Board of Police Commissioners changed the rules applying to private officers. No more hot pursuits in vehicles, so you couldn't do a hot pursuit after that, using a vehicle. But if somebody ran off the property or whatever, you could chase them. You could chase them or whatever. Missouri, the legislature, whatever, at some point, I was working in hospital security. The legislature decided to do like most of the other states and have a state law that govern security. And so they drew it up, proposed legislation. I'm not sure if I sent for it or if I could log in and get it then. Anyway, I got a copy of it. And I read it and I thought, oh no, this is not going to pass. I think it would have been a good idea. Well, I guess it's safe to say it now. There's no Kansas City, Missouri police officers around here. But it said, any commissioned police officer who works off-duty security, for extra money, who works off-duty security, will have to meet the requirements of, this law. And it said they will have to wear the security uniform. They can't wear their uniform, their police uniform. They can't have a badge on it. You can say security guard or something like that. And it was a whole bunch of stuff like that. And I blogged about it on my WordPress blog or whatever I was doing then. When I said, this will never pass. And sure enough, I'm sure not just police officers were contacting the state legislature, but chiefs of police and everybody else was and they threw that away. So the last I heard, Kansas City still has, this setup. And I looked at the general orders, not all of them, I didn't need to, but I just wondered. I looked at the general orders that the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department had, and one thing that popped out at me was if a Kansas City, Missouri police officer encounters in his patrolling see, we could be in, if our security company or whatever, well, like at the hospital, for a while, for a year or several years, on the second shift, one of us would work in civilian clothes, and they would be armed and everything else, but we would be in civilian clothes and make rounds or whatever. Of course, the director of security there, I've talked about in the past. I think I made an entire video about what an asshole he was. By the way, he was hired, or he applied at Pinkerton, or at Pendergrass, you know, and he got in the police department that way. He went to, "Sir, could I have a job?" And Pendergrass, I'm sure, said, "Well, now you know, if I give you a job, you're indebted to me, you know, and whatever." And anyway, and the security officers that worked at that facility, you know, I mean, the guy who got hired by Pendergrass, he, you know, retired from the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department, a ranking officer. Then he was in charge, he was director of security at General Hospital, which later became Truman Hospital, and then he moved on to this other hospital, Research. And he was unbelievable. I couldn't believe how bad he was. And I mean, everything that he did, covered up everything, didn't tell us stuff that we needed to know. If an incident happened or whatever, it'd be locked by the time we got. If you worked the day shift, you might know about it. But all this type of stuff that he did was just so incomprehensible and unbelievably bad, and such a mistake. But he scared the hell out of everybody, you know, except for me. And he had to beg me to take the job, and then the chief of police at Raymore, where I was a reserve officer, you know, "Jim, you know, so-and-so's been trying to call you." And I said, "I'm not, I have a telephone answer, I'm trying to," when I talk to him, you know. And he said, "Well, please, you know, would you do me a favor? You know, we were on the police department together, and you know, this guy lived in Raymore, and he helped get this sergeant, you know, retired sergeant, the job of chief of police, and, you know, he got me my job here, and I ended up working for a few years there. Well, wait a minute, 18 years. But he just, so anyway, oh yeah, all this stuff filtered down to the supervisors of the shift, and just everything was secret, you know. The supervisors knew something, and they wouldn't tell you. You wouldn't tell you stuff that you knew, you know, because they wanted to be in the know, and so they wouldn't tell you. You know, there'd be a meetings of hospital staff and security, and they would tell, you know, "Hey, effective such and such a date." Well, like one of them was, and I just happened to be working. You know, on such and such a date, no longer are rape victims going to come to this hospital and to St. Luke's and whatever the other, you know, one of the three hospitals. And, you know, like in the beginning, rape victims went to the closest hospital. It didn't work out. There was problems, you know, the nurses there in the emergency room didn't know how maybe to do, you know, some of them did, but didn't know how to do the proper exam, and then they came up with the bright idea, you know, well, just 3 hospitals, and they'll be really trained how to handle, you know, that type of stuff. And so anyway, they had at research hospital. They had this meeting, and the lieutenant or whatever, senior charge officer is what it was called, because hospitals have senior, charge nurses and stuff. And so he went, and he would receive this information, effective such and such a date. You will be receiving, these. Maybe research wasn't up until that point one of the. Anyway. So anyway, of course, just naturally, I happened to be working that day. Except it was nights, evening, or whatever. And an officer pulls in with his patrol car, and he has a lady with him, and I can look, okay, this looks like a, rape victim to me. And then the officer comes over and says, I gotta, whatever. I said, okay. Then I told the nurse or whatever to, whatever, take the, and there was I didn't say, anything, I didn't. And then after, then I asked the ER clerk, I said, why, oh, that was it. I guess we weren't getting them before. I guess that, and then we were. I said, I thought that rape victims, were to go to such and such. Oh, no, didn't you get the information? There was meetings, and they passed the word on to, Charlie Bueller, our senior, he was at the meeting and whatever. That explains it. He was keeping that information to himself. And, I could have very easily, I couldn't, but I could see. I worked with some guys who, the police officer pulls in, gets out of the car or whatever, and I could see the security officer, yelling, we got a rape victim here, strike one. The first rule was, would be, but anyway, we did end up getting at that hospital a good security director eventually, after this guy finally retired. And, he actually, in the beginning, when I first hired in, when he called and begged me to come to work and all this kind of stuff for him, and I honestly believe that, I have good reason to believe that he got me mixed up with somebody else. I had the experience that some place should want to hire me with all the experience that I had, all the years of security and hospital security and everything, so. But I think he must have had in his drawer, a couple envelopes, and one must have been, I don't know how many names would have been in it or whatever. Never fucking hired any of these people. And then he probably had one in there, that had some, oh yeah, this is, and I think he must have got my name by mistake. And he realized it once in fact, I was hired, also, if he'd have just told me, I've worked as a welder for many, many years, as a Boilermaker, a union, a member of the Boilermakers Union, all those building trucks, railroad cars, and all. I had never been without a job. I didn't have to go, of course. Pendergast wasn't around when but I was never without a job. Usually had a part-time job also. And if he didn't want me, all they had to do was say, hey, Jim, I think I made a mistake. And I just said, fine, I'll go someplace else. And, but anyway, he took me to breakfast there at the hospital, in the cafe part or whatever. Bought me breakfast. And then he was telling me, I got my job through Pendergast or whatever, and I forget what he said, but he was saying, yeah, when I got that job, I had, Pendergrass, but I had to, whatever. If you get a job from somebody and then you owe that person or whatever. And I was sitting there, I should have got up and quit that. Or I should have just said, hey, if you're telling me that I owe you something, I don't owe you anything. You called me. You begged me to come to work for you. You called the chief of police at Raymore and asked him to beg me to come to work, to come to work for you, And I'd have been happy to, But anyway, he told me, and I just sat there and ate my breakfast. But I think I got sidetracked there. I was going to tell you something about something, and I forgot. But I'm not going to forget to tell you to please click the thumbs up. Please subscribe if you're not subscribed. And thank you very much for watching. I'm not putting that music at the beginning of this video, and I'm hoping that the audio will be in sync. It's not daylight yet, but anyway, thank you very much for watching.